I'm Shannon Gibson, and I'm the Dean of the David B. O'Malley College of Business. And welcome to this afternoon's webinar, where I am pleased to welcome a host of executives from across the aviation industry. If you're joining us, I know that you're excited to learn more about the process of ticketing from these individuals, and I know they've got a lot to teach us. Please feel free to put questions in the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen, and our guest will answer questions as they go. Without further ado, I'd like to turn over the panel to Mr. Glenn Barczewski, an alumnus of Embry-Riddle, to conduct the panel. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, guests. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Dee Gibson. It's a pleasure to be here, and I get to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to me, and that's airline distribution. So just real quickly about me, I'm an Embry-Riddle grad twice. I did my bachelor's in Daytona Beach and my MBA here in Miami. I've spent most of my professional career at Amadeus, and in the last 10 years, specifically in airline distribution sales. So if you're not familiar with Amadeus, we operate a GDS, a global distribution system. And what that is we aggregate content from air, car, hotel, rail, insurance companies, and we make that all available to travel agents all around the world to make a booking. Obviously, I'm focused on the air aspect. I use the term travel agent a little generically because travel agents do come in a lot of different flavors, but they're the ones typically that are making bookings. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. The other part of Amadeus is we host the airlines reservation systems. We have two platforms. One is Accelya, and that is typically for more of a full service carrier. And there's about 150 airlines using Accelya, like Southwest here in the US, Air France, KLM, Iberia, British Airways, Qantas, etc. We also operate the Navitaire platform, which is really geared for the low cost carrier. And we have such carriers as Spirit, Frontier, Sun Country here in the US, and Swoop in Canada. So today we'd like to talk about airline distribution and what is that? So it's a broad topic and we only have an hour. So to keep it very high level and to give you a sense of what it is, it's really reaching the right customer at the right place at the right price. And so for that, we want to talk a little bit about what distribution is and how different airlines approach the distribution process. And so some people may say, well, that's how do you sell an airline ticket? But it's really getting the product out to the consumer. So in distribution, we tend to think of it as either being direct or indirect. So as the name implies, direct, an airline has their website. That's their opportunity to sell their products and services directly to the consumer. So we have two airlines with us today, Spirit Airlines and WestJet. Both of them have a website, as you can imagine, and that's their opportunity to sell. But a direct channel could also be an ATO or a CTO, an airline ticket office or a city ticket office. City tickets offices are not that common today, but they still do exist, and some airlines do have them in some key cities, and that's another direct channel. And finally, there's a call center. Yes, you can still call an airline and you can make a booking, and they still exist. So those are the direct channels. When we talk about indirect, that's typically done through a travel agent. And as I said, that's a generic term. Travel agents come in lots of different flavors. They can be online or offline. And today we have one of the largest, if not the largest, online travel agent, Expedia, with us. And we'll talk about we'll hear how they factor into the airline distribution ecosystem. So travel agents can also be a tour operator, they can be a wholesaler, they can be a TMC, a travel management company, where they're focused on booking corporate travel, which is a very important sector for a lot of airlines. So travel has changed a lot, the technology has changed a lot. And certainly when it comes to distribution, there's a lot more technology involved in selling an airline ticket. And one of the players that has changed the way airlines, or helping airlines to change the way they market and merchandise their products, is Accelya. And we'll hear from them as well and to see what they're doing in this distribution space. I'm sure that a lot of you students out there, if you're at Embry-Riddle, you've probably taken your marketing course and you've probably heard about the 5 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, promotion, and people. And so a lot of that really applies in distribution as well. There are different distribution strategies for different airline products. Some airlines have one cabin, they're all economy, and there's a certain strategy on how you distribute those products versus a carrier that may have a first class, business class, premium economy, and so forth. There's different strategies for each of those different products. Certainly price is a huge factor, and not all airlines want to sell the same price product in the same channels. So the price of the product sometimes will dictate what the strategy is in distribution. The place is certainly an important factor. Not every airline sells every product in every place. We have online, we have offline, we have direct and indirect, and an airline has to determine where do they want their products to be. And they may have certain products or certain fares in one place, but not in another. So that is certainly a big factor. We have promotion. So that could be, it could be a lot of things. It could be related to a loyalty program. It could be related to online advertising, web fares, a coupon that gets blasted out on Twitter or something. And so an airline also needs to think that if they're going to have some type of promotion, how do they factor that into their distribution planning? How do they operationalize that? And then finally, we have our people. Nothing gets done without people. And so an airline needs to determine who are the people that will help implement their distribution strategy. Oftentimes we see the distribution team within an airline, they're usually part of the sales and marketing team. Sometimes they're part of e-commerce team. Sometimes they're part of the IT department. So it all depends on the airline, but an airline has to identify who is going to be responsible for the distribution strategy. So there's certainly a lot of different topics within distribution that we could talk about, but in an hour's time, I would like you now to hear from 2 different airlines who have 2 different strategies. They're 2 different airlines, and so of course they require different strategies for distribution. And then, as I said, we'll hear from Expedia, a huge online player, and then lastly, an IT provider, Accelya. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first airline, WestJet, David Joseph of WestJet Airlines.
Thank you, Glenn, and good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to speak today. As Glenn mentioned, I'm David Joseph, Manager of Distribution for WestJet Airlines, and I am based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I manage the indirect distribution channels that Glenn had mentioned, and I'm going to give you a history of WestJet, which will show you how we fit into the ecosystem of distribution that Glenn just described. So who is WestJet? Our beginnings date back to 1996 with a vision of bringing lower fares to Canadians with a network of 3 aircraft flying to only 5 destinations in Western Canada, with an original plan not to expand outside of that region. So here we are today with 180 aircraft and more than 100 destinations throughout the world, with many milestones along the way that have contributed to our distribution landscape and our expansion. As I said, our airline launched in 1996, February 29th, in fact, and yes, the 29th was on purpose, as we like to do things a bit differently here. After the launch, there have been many milestones throughout our history. In 2002, we started our expansion to Eastern Canada with a focus on business travel to Toronto and that area. Then in 2004, we introduced our first flights to the US, as well as launched WestJet Vacations. As we continue to grow, we looked at new opportunities to gain market share and introduced our WestJet Rewards program. And unlike other rewards programs, ours is a little unique in that we don't earn points. You earn WestJet dollars, and those dollars earned can be used just like cash on any destination in our network. And there are no blackout dates that other rewards programs are subject to. Once again, we like to be a little bit unique. In 2012, we started to see our real growth by adding new aircraft, our Q400. This is a smaller aircraft that, other than our mainline jet aircraft, that allow us to fly to smaller communities in Canada that we couldn't previously serve with our jet aircraft. And we now have 47 of these aircraft flying within Canada and the US. So that expansion continued with the introduction of our first European destination, Dublin, in 2014, in conjunction with our first wide-body aircraft in 2015. Today, we now fly to 6 destinations within Europe, and we currently have 7 wide-body aircraft with another delivery of 3 additional over the next year. This is going to allow us to expand even further in parts of the world that we currently do not fly to. To further our expansion in 2017, we introduced our low-cost subsidiary Swoop, as Glenn mentioned, using the Amadeus Avatar reservation system. Although a WestJet company, they are operated independently from WestJet and Encore to the point that they have their own offices and staff in Calgary. And this was an opportunity for WestJet to expand from a hybrid, sort of a hybrid carrier into the ultra low cost carrier network. So with all that growth, we now serve 26 million guests per year with 700 flights a day pre-pandemic. And we're proud to have received several awards and accolades along the way. If you get a chance, a little plug here. If you haven't seen our Christmas videos and or our April Fool's videos, I encourage you to go to YouTube and search on those, because they're quite entertaining, and the Christmas videos will bring a little bit of joyous tears to your eyes. So we are no longer Canadian Airline. With 41 destinations within Canada, 28 destinations to the US, and 34 to what we call sun destinations. And as previously stated, 6 destinations to Europe. And this is all great, but you may be wondering, with the pandemic, how has this affected WestJet? So as previously mentioned, we have 180 aircraft, 100 destinations, and 700 flights a day. During the height of the pandemic, we reduced our schedule to 10% of pre-pandemic levels, parked 150 aircraft, and only flew within domestic Canada. I'm happy to say that although we aren't quite flying the 700 flights pre-pandemic, we have reintroduced all the routes back into our system. We've just reduced the frequency to certain destinations with all 180 aircraft back in the air. So how do we recover? That's where distribution contributes. We're responsible for managing various channels, many of which Glenn mentioned before, that sell our airline through computer systems that travel agents such as Amadeus, as well as the consumer side such as Expedia, Google, and Kayak, to name a few. Those indirect channels contribute to almost $2 billion in revenue to WestJet. In addition, we have partnerships with more than 50 airlines. All these partnerships allow us to receive reservations from more than 100 countries throughout the world. In addition, there are other areas that we lean on to recover from the pandemic. We remain loyal to and expand our WestJet Rewards program, which now exceeds 7 million members. We continue to grow our WestJet Vacations portfolio to more than 60 destinations. And as announced this month, we will be acquiring Sunwing Airline, which will expand our growth with more aircraft, up to 40, and more vacation destinations. We will continue to enhance the attributes that come with our WestJet RBC MasterCard and continue to enhance our mobile app. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So WestJet, I would call it a full service carrier in the sense that it has multiple cabins, international and all of that, which is going to be very different from Spirit, who will now speak, where we have one cabin and a more uniform product. Rich is a good friend and a colleague, a customer for many years. And we've often joked that sometimes keeping things really simple is really difficult. So with that, let me turn it over now to Rich and have a distribution perspective from a very different airline.
Hey, thanks, Glenn, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit with these other panelists on here. They are well known to me and in the industry. Julie and Ty specifically, they do this kind of thing on a weekly basis to tell the truth. Just a little bit of background on me. I am the Senior Director of Distribution and Sales Strategies for Spirit Airlines based in Miramar, Florida, Fort Lauderdale. I've been with Spirit for 16 years. Previous to that, I was with US Airways until America West acquired them and ate them up, which is now called American Airlines. So as they all merged into one entity. Prior to that, I was able to enjoy some time as a senior account manager at Amadeus, where Glenn works. So I've had background in the GDS world, a legacy airline world, and or full service airline, and now ULCC, and that's kind of laid a great foundation for the strategic role that I get to do here at Spirit. A lot of airlines in the industry don't necessarily prioritize their distribution or their distribution strategy. They kind of take it as it comes, and with that, I've been able to find my niche into being able to manage risk, as well as understanding data, where the bookings come from, to be able to understand the paths forward. Third-party distribution is what we call indirect distribution here at Spirit. And that's anything, and to kind of what Glenn said, is anything that is sold by somebody else, to make it easy. We do have our own website. We do have an app. We do have a res center still. We do have CTOs in the international destinations, but all of that, leads up to the fact that the third-party distribution does make up quite a large share of Spirit's business. Expedia on here does a fantastic job with us, and the reason why they don't prioritize, other airlines don't prioritize it so much, is it's difficult to understand. Now, it's not just a commercial product, or a business product. You go in and hash out an agreement or a contract and price and stuff like that with one entity. It's about the technical ability in which to distribute your product. So like Glenn said, Spirit's a little different. In 2008, we went through what we call an unbundling, where in the past, all airlines, you pay one price and you got a cup of water, maybe some peanuts on board, you got your a seat assignment, and all of those types of things for one price or one total price. Spirit in 2008 took the brunt of a lot of industry ridicule, but we followed in the lines of like a Ryanair out of Europe, where we unbundled everything except for, we get you from point A to point B. We let you bring a personal item, and then you get to customize your trip any way you like. So as Glenn said, we're in the all economy cabin, but we have some big front seats in the front of the plane. You can buy a $20 fare on us, and spend $100 to go to Vegas on Friday night in the big front seat. We're good with that. If you want to bring a carry-on, with all your stuff in it, a little bit more money. So at the end of the day, we never really said that we would be cheaper than anybody else, but we gave you the option to select or unselect the products and services that you liked. I've been lucky enough throughout my career to work with our distribution partners and travel sellers, distribution partner as the GDSs and the travel sellers like Expedia here, to maximize our yield. One of the things when you do unbundle, it's easy to, change your website to make sure that you've got the right products to the customer or the guest at the right time. the thing that we've had to work really hard on this last 5 years, or even more in some cases, less in other cases, is that how do we get those products and services out to the guest that that chooses a different place in which to purchase? So Spirit's taken on the role of we want to make sure that wherever the guest wants to interact, whether it be Expedia, that they can get the same or a similar experience that if they went to spirit.com. You know, we're good at we're real good at flying airplanes, but a website, I can tell you that, you know, Expedia's got a lot more experience and understanding and knowledge and data, and they do a lot of work with their website. They know how to sell probably better than we do. So we rely on a lot of advice from them. And with our the new technology with NDC, we've been able to get to a point of where we can supply some of those things. And just recently, we've launched our bundles on Expedia and our seats. Our baggage is coming shortly, and it's through our NDC new technology concept. And luckily for us, as of today, almost 95% of our third-party distribution can go through NDC today. We still love our GDSs and travel agents, no matter where they want to book us. And I'll leave it at that. I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions, so we can go into that further. That's
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich. And I think that's the perfect segue then to turning over the discussion now to Julie at Expedia. So on one side, we have airlines that want to sell their products and services, and now we have somebody on the other side that wants to sell, and that's where Expedia comes in. As I said, I use the term travel agent, and there's lots of different flavors. And Julie, you may take exception with that term. And I often tell people, oh, Expedia is a travel agent, and they look at cross-eyed and they say, but they're online. And I said, yes, but that still makes them a travel agent. So I know Expedia does a tremendous amount of work. They do a lot of things, and maybe at their core, they're a travel agent, but I know they're a whole lot more. And so please tell us about Expedia.
Of course, and I don't take offense at being called a travel agent. I think we're proud of being travel agents.
Good.
And we power a lot of travel agents throughout the industry with our technology as well. So we are part of that ecosystem. For me personally, my journey started 27 years ago in the airline industry, and it was a really interesting time in the industry. It was in the mid-90s. What ended up happening is that most of the large airlines had previously been paying about 10% standard commission to all of the agencies. There were travel agencies on every corner. My first job at British Airways was calling on those small travel agencies. And over the course of the coming years, we saw a lot of consolidation. We saw growth of large mega agencies and the rise of the online travel agency experience, especially as those commission cuts went into effect and it no longer became like economically viable to have a storefront where you were booking New York to Vegas type tickets, especially since those kinds of transactions were reasonably easy for consumers to do themselves. So a lot of change in the industry. I stayed at British Airways for 16 years, did a lot of really cool things there. But then about 11 years ago, I joined Expedia, and that has been a really interesting trajectory as well. So just a little bit about Expedia Group. We were founded in 1996, right around the time that I joined the industry, as a division of Microsoft. So it was originally like a CD-ROM, it was Expedia. That's how you booked your tickets. And it has evolved, obviously, quite a bit since then. A fast-growing industry. In 1999, we were spun off as a public company. And in 2001, we were purchased by IAC Group, which is owned by Barry Diller. And Mr. Diller tells this amazing story about the sale was announced in June or July of 2001. And then September 11th rolled around, and they had the opportunity to leave the deal, to terminate the offer. And they talked about it a lot, and they decided that where there's life, there's travel, and decided to progress with it. And I think he'll say it was one of his better decisions, and he's in a career of many, many great decisions that Mr. Diller has made. So that was just sort of the beginning of him being part of our universe. And then we were spun off, and we are a publicly traded company. He is our chairman today. So we've continued to grow a lot. I joined in 2011. my team is responsible for the global air partnerships. And we've also grown as a company since then. We've acquired other brands like Travelocity, Orbitz, Verbo, which is a vacation rentals company, which was a very good thing to have during a pandemic when everyone was booking vacation rentals. So we have sort of a wide portfolio of brands underneath us. But what my team does is we look after, if Glenn mentioned the 5 Ps, I'm going to mention 4 Cs. We're responsible for securing content. We want to make sure that customers who come to our sites have the ability to book all of the fares, the availability, the ancillary products that are most important to them. We also are focused on connectivity. So Ty is going to talk a little bit about how his company is facilitating changes in the connectivity model. Glenn's company has the GDS model. We use both types of models of direct connect and GDS technology. There are pros and cons to every kind of connectivity that you could possibly use. And it's a very individual conversation that we have with each of the airlines and with our GDS partners to determine what the best way to secure the content is. We also are focused on compensation. So we work with our airline partners to determine a fair compensation for the demand that we drive to them. And then, but the whole thing that really ties it all together is the 4th C, and that is the customer. The customer is at the heart of everything that we do, and making sure that we have the right connectivity, the right technology, the right relationships, the right content to deliver a customer experience that's truly going to add value and provide delight for the customer. That's what keeps us going. We work with about 500 different airlines on a global basis. So I have a team of about 40 people spread throughout the world working with airlines all over the place. And we also are focused now on Expedia as a platform. So one of the things that people may not know is that my team works with airlines to power their own websites through technology and inventory. So for instance, you might go to one of the major airline sites and book a hotel using your frequent flyer miles. Oftentimes those hotels, that technology is powered by Expedia Group. So we really do view ourselves as part of a two-sided marketplace where we create a great deal of demand for our airline partners. They bring to the table excellent supply, and it's really about how do we do value, how do we create value for both of us and for the customer at the end of the day in this ecosystem. So it's an exciting time to be in distribution, and I hope that some of you, as you embark on your careers, you consider joining this kind of area, because I think that there's a lot of great upside here. So I'll pass it back to Glenn.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And I think what you said towards the end there, that there's a two-sided model where you're generating demand and matching that with the airline partners on the other side is wonderful. I think that's a real key takeaway. So as I've said, I work for Amadeus, and we consider ourselves to be a technology company, but we're not the only entity in the marketplace. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Ty Ratcliffe from Accelya, and they have a different approach on how they help airlines market and merchandise. Rich referenced NDC, which I know Ty will kind of tie that back in as well. It's an innovation that's up and coming, and he's very near to that. So Ty, welcome.
Thank you, Glenn. And it's a pleasure to be here to speak with you all. I'm going to have to watch the clock closely because I'm so passionate about this particular topic that I could go on for way longer than the amount of time that I'm given. Each of the folks that are on this call are either personal friends of mine or folks that I have just recently met and will become great personal friends with. Julie and I, for instance, have known each other for many years in my role at United Airlines, where I was responsible for distribution for about 10 years. Rich and I know each other. I worked for Amadeus. Glenn and I were on the same team for many years at Amadeus. My company actually powers or provides services to David's company, WestJet, as well. So I've been in the industry since probably 1997. I've worked for Amadeus a couple times. I've worked for Orbitz.com, G2 Switchworks. Most recently United. I left United in July of last year as this opportunity at Excelia opened up. Excelia is interesting. It's a kind of a collection of multiple companies. Revenue accounting, which is sort of the back end processing for airlines, how they recognize revenue. So that was sort of the core part of it, as well as cargo. And now they've purchased a company called Farelogix. And if you Google Farelogix and check out what they've done in the industry, it's been interesting. They actually are based here in Miami, and they donated the very first schema, XML schema, which has become the foundation of NDC. And you heard Rich mention that earlier. NDC stands for New Distribution Capability. We came up with that acronym in 2012. So I don't know if it's fair that we should still call it New Distribution. I mean, that's 10 years ago, but we're still working on implementing it. And it's, you know, it took the industry 13 years to move away from paper tickets to e-tickets. So we're right on track for 13 years to move to NDC. So it's not the fastest industry. And I think a lot of that has to do with how complex it really is. I'm sure that you've probably heard of the book Hard Landing, and you can read in there sections on Bob Crandall's famous flight with the executive from IBM where they founded Sabre, you know, one of the first GDSs in the world. And back then it was a CRS, computer reservation system, and all of the things that have happened since then to help an airline distribute its products and services through third parties. There are standards that were developed back in the 1950s. All standards in the industry are managed by IATA, the International Airline Transport Association. I'm sure that you all are familiar. And so we've been using teletype and edifact messages since the 1950s and 60s. It hasn't been broke, why fix it, right? Well, it's because you can't put a picture of the big feet that Rich was just referring to in a teletype or edifact message. You can't put a nice picture of all the cool things inside of a WestJet aircraft for things that for Julie to display on Expedia and show people the difference between different airlines. So many people say, oh, it's just a commodity and the airline sees the commodity. Well, that's not true at all. There are several different products and services. And as airlines invest further, there's even more reason to educate customers about that distinction. And that's really one of the core things that NDC brings to the market here is this capability to educate customers on the differences between products and to personalize offers. So back in the day when things started, you would publish your fares through this company called Airline Tariff Publishing Company, ATPCO. You send your schedules through OAG, the official airline guide, and then you communicate with airlines via these legacy messages for inventory, open or closed, right? And so the GDSs for many years took on the heavy burden of coming up with all of those shopping results. And the technology in the airline industry in the 60s was fantastic. I mean, it's very cutting edge. But I think what happened along the way is that we all sort of got entrenched in this way of doing business with green screens and things of that nature. And we keep trying to come out of that. But because we haven't really done it as a standard together, there have been shoots and offshoots, but we've not really lifted up the whole industry together in the way that we are with NDC. It lays the rails for us to start having these dialogues with one another in a real-time way with rich information and letting the airline be in control of those shopping responses instead of folks like the GDSs or others. Not to say that that's going away anytime soon with other people creating the shopping results, but that, you know, the desire of the airlines by and large is to say, look, I know about the customer. I know that I spilled coffee on them. I know that the last 4 flights were late. I know that we lost their luggage. Let me make a personalized offer to the customer to recognize those things I know about them. Or I know that they bought an economy plus seat the last 4 times that they flew or they never have. So I want to give them one for free. Maybe Rich wants to say, I want to give you a big seat one time free because I see you're frequently traveling on me. And then I know that you'll be hooked because you'll love it and you'll want to do it. Same thing for WestJet, right? Give them an upgrade into one of the different seats, or give them some experience that they maybe haven't tried before. And once they taste that, they'll be interested in it, educated about it, and want to try it again and again. And that's really the power that NDC is going to bring to make those customized offers to customers, and to get the content out there in a meaningful way. I think I've probably gone pretty much to my time limit. But anyway, Farelogix is the company that's bringing all of that kind of stuff to market along with others, and we're excited to continue to help airlines realize that distribution opportunity.
Thanks, Ty. I think you tied that up really well. So we have airlines, we have travel agents, and we have technology in the center to kind of facilitate all of that. So let's open it up to some questions. We have one question that came in, which is wonderful, and it's just saying, how has the pandemic changed the buying behavior? Are there any differences pre-pandemic, post-pandemic? What are the trends that may have been that have come about because of the pandemic? So I put that out to the entire panel for their different perspectives.
I can take it first if you want.
Sure.
So we've seen the price is always a leading indicator for people that are choosing to travel. But during the pandemic, we saw something else that came about, and it was, self-service and touchless. So at Spirit, we've done a lot of things with, for example, our self bag drop, where you actually take your bag, you put your ticket or your driver's license under it, it prints out a bag tag, you actually, tape it together, put it on this automated, belt, and it goes off by itself. To the app exploded on the ability for people checking in and to purchase, different ancillaries. So people just don't necessarily, we've seen evolution of people wanting to interact less with people, but still be able to travel. And so, they're looking a little bit more for value. So are the planes cleaned? Do they have Wi-Fi, which we've just launched Wi-Fi on all our planes? Do they, can I get through with just my app on the phone and go through TSA? And some of those, can I just drop my bag off and go? We've seen that be a jump up in its indication on how people are selecting travel today.
So Rich, as a follow-up, did Spirit already have this functionality that it's just being used at a greater rate, or were these some things that you realized, oh, we have to go develop and get this to market?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, luckily we were dipping our toes in the self bag drop. Las Vegas was a big one for us. Now by, the popularity of it, if something doesn't, work, you fail fast. You take, put a little bit of risk out there, fail fast. But we've seen that the uptake in those types of things have enormous value. And we've launched the app during the pandemic, a better app. We went to a mobile app versus just a representation of the website on mobile. So we did that at kind of the direction of investing in the guest. The guest told us this is what they want, this is how they want to interact with us, and we've implemented that. And then we continue to listen to the guest in that aspect.
Very good.
Yeah, I'll echo what Richard said. I mean, we, a lot of those things we were already doing, but we actually enhanced them. Because the touchless from the time you arrive at the airport till you get on the aircraft and such was certainly very important and such. But one thing we also saw was, and really working with, Expedia, with Julie's team, as well as, with Ty and the Farelogix Accelya team, is that, we saw that we had to take the opportunity to step back and look at our technology, and really, I guess, come into the next century of technology within the industry, and working and having a plan around NDC. And also just working closer with, with the likes of Expedia, and how can we distribute and sell our product much better, on those distribution sites and such. So, and then overall, I think the overall effect, and as we recover, everyone talks about it. When's business travel going to recover? I mean, we're mainly a leisure airline. We were, with our wide bodies and reconfiguring our planes, we were really expanding into the business class side of the business. And, the pandemic pretty much put all of that on hold. So, recovering with that business, that business traveler is certainly going to be a challenge, I think, for all airlines.
Okay. Anybody else on this question?
I mean, I think that, to your point, David, one of the things that travelers have been able to take advantage of during the course of this pandemic is lower fares for leisure and the ability to book in a lot closer than they historically have, because typically those fares are reserved for business travelers who are a little less price sensitive. So as business travel does start to come back, I think airlines have a really strong desire to improve their yield. And we are going to see those types of close-in prices becoming less competitive. And so travelers will need to start to begin to plan ahead a little bit more than they have been over the course of the last year or so. We're also going to see a diversity in the routes that people travel. For the last couple of years, it's been North America, North America, North America, and some leisure destinations just outside of North America. We are going to see people returning to Europe. Asia Pacific, much slower rate of recovery, but we will eventually see that. And we're starting to see some really nice green shoots in places like Australia and Singapore, where they're opening more and more opportunities for people to travel. So the diversity of the routes that people fly, the timing in which they book. The other thing that's happened during the course of the last few years is that many airlines have made their standard economy fares completely flexible, and travelers tell us they want more flexibility. And so this is a response to that. There's also then a lot of infrastructure that we as an industry need to build to allow them to do that, to have credits for future travel, to rebook those, et cetera. So that's a big changing trend for a lot of us.
Okay, great. So we have another question that's almost a follow-up to this. Has there been any significant shift in the rebound of leisure since the beginning of the year due to geopolitical issues and inflation? So I think this is kind of picking up what you've just said. I would also add, how does leisure compare to business? From our perspective, we've seen that leisure is outpacing the business traveler. And we expect that business will take a little time to recover. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
I mean, I think these are all really good points. I don't think that we've seen any specific things that we can tie to either geopolitical or inflation. We see an improvement, constant improvement over where we were. We're not at 2019 levels yet, but our hope is that we will be at 2019 levels within, not too long from now.
Okay. We have another question regarding insurance. Not sure if we've got another question here regarding insurance. Is anybody aware of an insurance product being sold along with an airline ticket, essentially as a stock option to ensure a specific price or to lock in a specific price? Is that anywhere in your distribution strategy?
So I can take a little bit of shot at that one, as it's kind of the future, what we're looking at. And there are travel sellers out there that do offer these types of travel insurance. One of them named Cancel for Any Reason, which is a product that's on the market that we're seriously looking at. We are a non-refundable ticket airline. So outside of the government mandated, within 24 hours, anybody can get 100% refund on any airline ticket in the US for sure. I'm not sure, I don't want to throw Canada in there, but that is a mandate for us. So outside of that, what can people do to ensure that they don't lose the price of their ticket? Well, there's with any crisis, there's a trickling up of some new and innovative type of products and ancillary products where, yeah, if you spend an extra $20 on top of your ticket, you can get 80% of your refund back. Or if you spend 25, you get 90% of that back. Cancel for any reason, which means that we don't care why you cancel it. We'll give you your money back. And so it spreads out the risk amongst many, for the few that will end up taking something like that. But those things are out there and coming to the airlines quick.
Very good.
Yeah, they're definitely out there. Sorry, Ty. Yeah, definitely out there. And I mean, we do sell insurance in path with a booking and a reservation, both to protect the guest, but also from medical insurance as well. I think one of the challenges is that, when you're working with partners such as Expedia is, how do you sell that in other channels? How do you sell that, through a GDS and such, so it's more, prevalent on direct sites as opposed to, on the indirect side. So I think that's certainly, a challenge, within the industry as we move forward, maybe from a technical perspective and stuff is, how we expand those offerings outside of our direct channels.
Very good.
My addition is that, United, for instance, has a fare lock product where you can say, I want to lock in that fare for a certain amount of time, because as you know, with inventory changing, especially close into departure, the fare is going to go up, potentially pretty significantly. So you can pay for fare lock, which is sort of like an insurance product, in order to keep that fare locked in until you decide to buy. So that's one example of a type of insurance product. It's interesting with what Rich was saying. Airlines are required to refund within 24 hours by the DOT, but travel agents are not. Expedia is a good travel agent that will help you in that situation, but not every travel agency will. So it's an interesting point that buyer beware. Buy from good travel
Thank you.
agents.
I want to emphasize, we definitely do. If you wanted to cancel within the void window, you can cancel within the void window when you book on Expedia. So thank you, Todd.
Not every agency does that.
Okay, great. So we have another question here. And what can airlines learn from a traditional retailer? Certainly Amazon comes to mind as the merchandiser today. What can an airline perhaps learn from them or some other good, more traditional retailer?
So one thing I would say is, going back to that traveler experience drum that I'm continuing to beat. One of the things that Amazon is great about is if you need to return a product, you can just do it. It's easy. You drop it off at a number of different places. Sometimes you don't even have to return the item if it's a low value thing. If you read a typical airline policy, it sometimes is like a series of 24 different conditional if-then sentences. We make it so difficult for travelers to interact and to get service in some cases that they end up getting very frustrated. And it's really about, we're trying to tie up every loophole, but in doing so, we're really creating a friction-filled experience that is actually probably driving a lot of hidden costs in our own business that we could probably avoid if we were a little less precious about it. Amazon seems to have figured that out, and I think that would be a great thing for the airlines to take some inspiration from.
Okay, funny, because I think that Amazon is Amazon. They're so big that who cares what other retailers do, right? They sort of drive their own, make their own decisions. If you're an airline and you decide to take a risk and do something unique, if other airlines don't follow you, sometimes you end up out there by yourself looking dumb or feeling or regretting your mistake, right? And so I think it's interesting in that regard. But customer centricity really is made difficult by the technology that we've had and been entrenched in. A lot of the systems that are out there that support airlines are built around the flight. You build this record that has a flight, and then everything is tied to that flight. It's not focused and honed in on the customer itself. And I think that's where you'll see one thing I didn't talk about. NDC is the precursor to One Order. One Order is the next initiative that says, let's get rid of the idea of this ticket. If Amazon was running the airline world, they'd say, why do you need a ticket? What on earth are you going to do with this ticket, right? They'd say, you have an order and it's either paid for or it's not, to the complexity that Julie was just describing, right? Many of you probably have gotten to the airport and you've heard, oh, your e-ticket is not synced to your P&O. What are you talking about? Luckily, some airlines don't have e-tickets at all. They're ticketless. But that's just the complexity that we've got in there. And then this whole notion of a PNR, this passenger name record, the data structure, it's very limited. A very quick aside, when airlines started to charge for bags, there was no box on the electronic ticket where you would put a fee for a bag. So we had to come up with 2 or 3 different solutions to try to even collect the money for the bag fee, which has resulted in other documents similar to tickets. Again, think of it like a hotel. When I check out of this hotel, I'll have one bill that will include everything I bought. The breakfast I had this morning, the hotel charge, if I rent a movie, if I go to the bar, it will all be on one easy to read thing. Why isn't the airline industry the same? That's what One Order is going to try to bring to bear. And that's really what a big part of what my job is here at Accelya.
That's an interesting point, but all this time we've been working within the confines of an industry standard. And as you say, when you wanted to start collecting per bag, which was a new fee, how do you collect that? It seems kind of silly that it shouldn't be that complicated, but in the airline world where the ticket number drives everything in accounting, well, now I don't have an accounting number. I don't have a ticket number. So how do I record the revenue if I don't have a ticket number to go along with it? It sounds kind of silly, but those are the systems that airlines have today in which we have to work around.
Let's just say that my CEO came from outside the airline industry, and when I try to explain stuff, he looks at me like I'm insane. So.
And it's a good point that everybody makes. And here's what a little piece of advice to everybody listening would be: don't get stuck on what currently works. Always consider what's new, or you're going to be the blockbuster when Netflix comes out, or you're going to be the taxis when Uber comes out. Always be looking ahead. It doesn't mean that you have to just throw everything away that you've already done. But what it is always evaluate that next level. There's so much new coming out. There's so many smart, technology startup companies out there. Get with them, understand what they do. How are they selling it? I know, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, that Expedia has a whole part of their company where they evaluate these new startups, and then they kind of, see what works and what doesn't, and they bring those things forward as they come. So, don't get stuck on what you're already doing, but don't throw it out. Make sure that you're looking into the future for what next technology or products or services are coming.
Very good. That kind of then goes into our next question is, well, what do we see as the future? What's the next big trend that's coming around? So Ty, you've kind of One Order. Anything else you would add to that?
That's going to be so big. I'll be talking to you in 13 years from now about how we're still.
Okay, we'll be happy to have you back.
But it's going to be big. Because think about it. Every player in the industry, if I say there's no ticket anymore, think about all the processes that the ticket touches within an airline, right? All the way from, you're trying to get on the plane. Is the ticket paid for or not? And then all the revenue accounting and everything that touches that. it goes away. And so we're talking about radical transformation of the way an airline works today, and then every partner that they interact with. So that's a huge one, and that would be my biggest trend that I.
Okay.
You know, and I'll just add that, you know, I personally think that we're going to see a personless airport where the people are not there anymore. With the biometrics that we have at a lot of the airports, the self-service, everything from, you know, when we do have an IROP right now or a disruption, irregular operations, your flight gets canceled, delay, we are sending and pushing information to the guest directly on their phone, their tablets, via SMS, email, etc. And we're providing other air options. You just push the button. Okay, I'll take the later flight on Spirit. Or, hey, Spirit doesn't travel anymore today. Let's book the American one. Or your hotel vouchers, your meal vouchers, everything's going to be sent to you. It's all going to be automated. You're not going to, unless you really want to, you're not going to have to talk to anybody. You're going to be able to get on the plane, not have to talk to anybody, biometrics. That's where I see within the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot of the clearing out of the people out of the airports.
Wow. Okay.
I think that's fascinating. I never really thought of that, Rich. That's really cool. One more thing that popped into my mind is the industry is also talking about you as a customer and how you will own your own data and how you will enable people to access that data in the future. And how you will say, well, this is my information, it has value. I could even see a point in the future where perhaps you even sell your personal data to people that need it or want it. You know, maybe it becomes an NFT, right? Maybe there's a snapshot of your data becomes a non-fungible token, or maybe you're. But regardless, I see a world where customers will take more and more control of their private information and decide. You're already seeing it with things like cookies, right? Well, imagine that 10 times bigger, that, you know, where you're saying, okay, well, I will give you this information to service my booking, et cetera, but then no more unless you compensate me or something else, right? So I think look for things in the personal data space.
Yeah. And that's a good point, Ty, because, you know, as we know in the industry, there's always been that argument, who owns the data? Yeah. You know, and who owns the data, who owns the customer, you know, and it's really the customer right now isn't in control of that. And so very good point.
I would throw out an entirely different trend from my perspective, which is around sustainability. Here in the US, not like the hugest talking point. I'll tell you though, when I work with my European partners, it is top of mind. And one of the things that we as an industry need to come to terms with is our impact on our climate and in sustainability. I think about when I go to a restaurant, a fast food restaurant, and there's calorie counts. And the calorie counts are there designed to help me make a better choice. And I can, if I choose to, because I know what calorie counts mean. I know what it means to have something that's 600 calories versus something that's 1,200 calories. I don't necessarily yet understand that in the carbon offset world and the emissions world. And so one of the things as an industry that's a huge opportunity, and it's a huge opportunity for the students at Embry-Riddle to think about, is how do we solve that? How do we get that to be part of the common vernacular? How do we create standards around that so that people can make good choices and airlines are forced to do the right thing as far as their ongoing impact on the climate? So I think that that's going to be something we're going to be talking about for a long time.
Okay, very good. So we have another question here about hiring. Is there a challenge in hiring workers, skilled versus unskilled? I assume since we're talking about this distribution, airline distribution, that's where this comes into play. From an Amadeus perspective, we're certainly looking for different expertise. So not to discount what Rich just said about, you know, look to the future, but I think there is a need for skills and understanding current airline operations. And then sometimes in order to move forward, you have to understand, well, what's currently going on? And if we change it, how will that affect it? So just, you know, again, as Ty alluded to, do you understand the impact of having a ticket number? Do you understand all the touch points for that? and the standards that we've talked about, I think there's absolutely a need for that. And so if that makes them a skilled worker, I think that that's certainly a priority. I'll throw that question out for anybody else that wants to answer.
Yeah, I think that you're right. You know, it's both skilled and unskilled labor is very difficult right now, especially in the airline industry. We've had to actually cut flights out of, you know, the red eyes from across the country because we can't get somebody to staff the airport at 2 in the morning. So that's a challenge. And, you know, some of the challenges we face, you know, and what we're looking for as an airline, and a shameless plug, Richard.Lowry, Lowry at spirit.com. Send me your resumes. We're looking to hire everything from pilots to distribution people, and revenue management people. Project management is a big thing right now in the airline industry. Somebody that can take a project and deliver from startup to completion, tracking all of it, you know, setting up data. Data is a big one, understanding and being able to do data, and not just to run data reports, but to actually interpret them and say, what is this data telling us? So those are some of the things from our point of view, but all of it's, we need more people, period.
Very good. And we have just 2 minutes left. Any other comments or anybody want to answer that question?
Yeah,
I would
just real,
Oh, go ahead, David. Yeah.
yeah, just real quick. I mean, you know, we're seeing the same thing here in Canada. You know, we went from 14,000 employees pre-pandemic down to 4,000, and you would think that you'd be able to bring a lot of them back as the business comes back, and it's a challenge. It's top of mind here. You know, waterways to to bring the employee base back, and as well competing with others, you know, within our area and stuff. And I mean, we've primarily gone, for the most part, almost 100% home-based employee base, just to encourage people to give that extra incentive, especially with fuel prices right now. If you don't have to drive into the office and such, but it is a concern, certainly.
Very good. All right, I think we've come to the end of our time. Julie, David, Ty, Rich, thank you very much for your perspective. For the audience out there, you've heard from 2 airlines, you've heard from a travel agent, Expedia, you've heard from a technology provider, all contributing to airline distribution. I hope this gives you some sense of the complexity and the excitement in the airline distribution world. And thank you very much for your attention.
Lynn, I want to say thank you for organizing this. I love the information. Julie, David, Ty, Richard, the opportunities for my students just continue to grow. To your point, David, when the pandemic hit, everyone thought that enrollment at Embry-Riddle was doomed, and yet we've grown. And that's a testament to the resilience of the industry that you've all made careers in and the opportunities that exist for our students. So thank you for providing great insight into that today. And we appreciate you and your time here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.